Thank you. Thank you very much. As leaders in this ever-changing business world, in my opinion, your people are your greatest asset. They are what separates you from your competition and what can distinguish you from as being better than the rest. But I'm also mindful at times they can be your biggest headache, and at times they can also be your greatest challenge. This talk today is going to outline 3 core performance principles that I know you need to have in place to be able to ensure that you and your people are able to reach and maintain elite performance levels. They are preparation, execution, and reflection. Before we explore them in more detail, I want to expose a lie. The lie is that people believe these elite performers don't face blocks or challenges. They don't experience things like low confidence or motivation or feel imposter syndrome. That's not true because they do. They really do. And it's been my privilege over the last 10 years to see that up front and in person. And before we go any further into these principles, and I share with you what I've seen and what I've learned from these elite performers, I just want to challenge the leadership belief that I sometimes still see in the leaders of the organizations that I work with. I want to challenge the belief that there can be a one-size-fits-all approach to elite performance in your people. The idea that there's one golden rule that can be applied that will maximize the effort and energy within your people's performance. That's not true either. And I appreciate that you are under pressure as leaders to get the very best out of your people and ensure they're performing at top levels. But what I notice in that rush is that leaders often try to find an answer for their people rather than being patient and finding the answer. So let's move forward from here in this talk today, thinking about the phrase, what works for you? And as leaders of your people, what will work for them? Explore principle preparation. This is the window, this is the time that happens pre-performance, pre-competition or delivery. Some of my clients would say that this is the key principle because they would say that if they prepare, it determines the outcome or the results that will be achieved. Let me share with you 2 case stories of 2 golfers that prepared for a competition. The first golfer, let's call him David. David arrived at the competition 3 days before. David's preparation routine was all about detail. He wanted to get out on that golf course and play it as many times as he could before the competition began. He wanted to touch the grass on the greens. He wanted to stand in the sandy bunkers. He even wanted to know where the toilets were on the course so he could manage his hydration. Golfer number 2, let's refer to him as Tim. Tim took a different approach. He didn't take the opportunity to arrive 3 days before. Instead, he stayed at home, surrounding himself with family and friends, practicing on a local golf course, local driving range. He didn't want to know any details about the competition course that he was playing in a few days' time. Tim's words to me were, Sam, I want to arrive on the day, stand on the first tee, see the shot, and then play it. 2 very different approaches, 2 very different preparation routines, but there's one similarity, and that's that they had taken time to truly understand what would work for them. They took time to truly understand what would work for them so that when they arrived to compete, they were in mind, body, and spirit as confident as prepared as they could be. On the slide in front of you, you've got 2 elite performing, highly successful athletes that prepare in very different ways. Usain, engaging with the crowd, absorbing that emotional energy and adulation. Michael Phelps, preparing by zoning out, purely staying in his focus and visualizing the race that he's taking ahead. Let's put the lens back to you and your people. Do your people currently prepare? Is it systematic? Do they have preparations and routines? Every elite performer that I've ever worked with does things with intention. It's intentional. I wonder if that's the same for your people, or if they fall into the space of it being accidental. Take a moment to reflect. Do your people prepare? How do they prepare? Second principle is execution. This is the principle where all that preparation is over, the referee has blown his whistle, the business meeting has started, and it's time to perform. This is what I describe as the performance window, and some of my clients describe it as the time to shine. One of the things that we notice about this is how much the elite performers, both in business and sport, love this space. It's the chance to get into the heat of the battle, to compete with one another or other people. But something also happens in this space. They regularly describe the feeling of pressure to perform. Now, an insight for you to share. They don't have a pressure to be perfect. The elite performers, both in business and sport that I work with, don't chase perfection. There's a pressure to perform, to be the very best that they can possibly be. I'm working with a senior executive in a corporate organization currently whose internal pressure, desire to be the best she can possibly be, skyrockets when she's walking into a client conversation or delivering a presentation to her team. She knows she's got skills and abilities, and she wants to make sure she leaves that execution phase knowing that she performed to her very best. I've got the opposite experience with a professional footballer that I'm working with. His pressure comes from external sources. When he's executing, when he's on that field of play, he's thinking about executing the game plan that the manager has given him so that he pleases the manager and gets picked for further games. He wants the 50,000 people in the stadium to be clapping and cheering him, giving him positive energy, and that the comments from the commentators and social media reflect that too. Regardless of where the pressure comes from, internally or externally, the elite performers that I work with utilize and use this to elevate their performance, pushing them higher and further. It never blocks them or inhibits them. The other thing that I see working with the elite performance space, and I want you to think about getting this into your leadership style and approach too, is that the elite performers I work with thrive off the jeopardy of loss. Winning to them is good, but losing is horrendous. So what that means is it gives them a pulse and energy. The jeopardy gives them that push to be the very best and give everything they can. They don't throw the towel in before the game is over. What about your people in your teams? Do they thrive off the jeopardy of loss? Are they playing to win? Or are they playing not to lose? Holding themselves back, fearing the loss. Final principle, when the game is done, the whistle is over, the sales call's been wrapped up, is reflection. This isn't about being critical, it's about being observational. The elite performers that I work with take the opportunity to analyze what went well and what could be improved. One of them described it to me as draining, squeezing out all of the water from a wet dishcloth to drain out all the goodness, to learn about what just happened in that performance space. I don't know about you, but at times I've done this. I don't want to observe or reflect or analyze. I just want to sweep it under the carpet, particularly if I feel it hasn't gone very well. These elite performers don't do that. Yes, it can be painful to be honest in observations, and yes, it can be really challenging to do. But whether it be a big win or a big loss, this is something that they do consistently. Do your people reflect? When was the last time you reflected with your people? Monthly, quarterly, yearly? It's intentional, and it happens consistently with these people. So I'm mindful of time. I've got to close and wrap up my talk with you today. But as a closing slide, I wanted to emphasize again, as leaders, there is no one rule or golden rule that can be applied to elite performance for your people. Take time as a leader, take time with them to work out what works for them. Don't chase an answer, find the answer, and make sure you are a leader who's putting PER into your people's performance. Thank you.